Hi there, I'm Shannon. My sister used to laugh at my quiet life. No husband, no kids, just work. She said I was selfish, cold. But behind my back, she was using my designs, my cabin, making $5,000 a month off what I built, while mocking me to my face. And when I found out, that was just the beginning. They broke into my property, forged documents. My own mother called me too dramatic. I kept quiet until I couldn't anymore. So I filed one lawsuit to end it all. But what really hurts? They weren't just stealing money. They were stealing me. And maybe someone in your family knows how to do the same. I didn't want to go. That was the truth I couldn't say out loud. When Mom called early Saturday morning, her voice syrupy sweet with that undercurrent of pressure she always layered in, I already knew I'd fold. I always did. Tobias watched me from across the kitchen table. Coffee mug paused halfway to his mouth. When I hung up, he didn't ask, just raised his eyebrows like, "So, we going?" I nodded. We pulled up to my parents' place in Asheville just before 2 in the afternoon. The driveway was a mess of SUVs and minivans. I could already hear kids screaming from the backyard, the kind of feral chaos that sounded more like a warning than a party. Tobias parked beside the Reynolds minivan, Jolene's, and we sat for a beat before getting out. I adjusted the hem of my linen shirt. Stupid choice for a cookout, but it had been a last-minute grab. Tobias took my hand for a second as we walked through the side gate, his thumb brushing my knuckles. Then the comment hit. "Oh, wow!" Jolene's voice cracked through the crowd like a beer can opening. "The childless queen finally blessed us with her presence." A laugh broke out. Real from a few cousins, fake from those who didn't want to look left out. I stopped in my tracks. Tobias gently pulled me forward, and I smiled, the kind that didn't touch my eyes. "You know me," I said, aiming for light. Always fashionably late. But my chest burned. Not from the heat, not from the smoke rolling off Dad's overworked grill. This was the slow, sour burn of public humiliation wrapped in a family joke. Jolene had always had that tone, mockery with a bow on top. We found chairs near the edge of the yard. Tobias went to grab us drinks, and I sat with my sunglasses still on, watching kids toss potato chips into the kiddie pool. I heard it again, behind my back this time. "Must be nice, huh? All that free time with no diapers or daycare bills?" Another voice chimed in. "She travels for work, doesn't she? Fancy job. No time for family." I clenched my jaw so hard I felt it in my temples. My cousin Maureen, already tipsy, flopped into the seat next to me. "You and Tobias ever thinking of settling down?" There it was. Again. I offered a tight smile. "We're settled. Just not in that way." "Oh," she said, pausing. "Well, everyone finds their own path, I guess." The judgment oozed through her tone like sap from a cut tree. I looked around. Dad was half hunched by the grill, turning chicken thighs in silence. Mom fluttered between groups with her apron still on, pretending everything was perfect. Jolene? She was holding court at the patio table, sipping something pink and cold, while her husband Derek tried to corral their twin boys, clearly failing. I didn't stay long. An hour, maybe less. Tobias knew. He gave me the out before I could ask. "Want to get out of here?" "Yeah," I said. "Please." We left without goodbyes. Back at home, I kicked off my shoes and collapsed onto the couch. Tobias went into the kitchen, pulled 2 glasses from the cabinet. "I forgot to tell you," he said, turning his phone toward me. "Saw something weird online. Thought it looked familiar." I squinted at the screen. Airbnb. Listing title: Modern Mountain Escape for Creatives. Cozy and private. Photos loaded. My rug, my books on the side table, the exposed beams we'd restored last winter, and the caption: Designed by me, hosted by family, perfect for remote creatives. The host? Jolene Reynolds. I stared at the screen for what felt like minutes. Then I took the phone and zoomed in on the living room photo. She'd even used my tea tray, the vintage silver one from the estate sale in Hendersonville. "She's renting it out," I said flatly. "Looks like it," Tobias said. "Under her name. That's your place, right?" I nodded slowly. "I never posted it anywhere. I barely even told anyone we bought it." "She must have gotten in through your parents," he offered. "Maybe they said it was okay." "Maybe," I echoed. But I didn't believe it. Not really. This wasn't just a misunderstanding. It wasn't some sweet gesture or an accident. This was calculated. Jolene had used me as a prop, then claimed the spotlight. And the comment at the BBQ? It wasn't just a jab, it was a warning shot. I sat upright, went to my laptop, started pulling the Airbnb listing, screenshots, timestamps, checked the calendar, dozens of booked weekends. The price per night wasn't low either. She was making real money. I clicked Save Page A's more times than necessary. Each click made the blood in my veins run colder. Tobias watched me but didn't say a word. He knew this wasn't the time. I opened the cabin's deed file, the utilities, the maintenance records, all in my name, paid in full. Every screw and screw-up funded by me. She's not just mocking me, I murmured. She's profiting off my life. The bitterness wasn't new, but this clarity was. Years of swallowing it down, years of letting it slide. But tonight, something shifted. I used to call her my sister. Now she feels like a stranger in my life. 3 days passed. I'd buried myself in admin tasks, quiet nights, and avoidance. I wasn't sure if it was grief, disbelief, or just emotional hangover. Whatever it was, I hadn't spoken to Jolene since the BBQ, and I had no plans to. Tuesday morning came with overcast skies and lukewarm coffee. I sat at my desk, planning to finish a branding proposal for a boutique hotel chain in Durham. The client had seemed enthusiastic, until now. An email pinged just before 9 a.m. Subject, change of direction from Christina at magnoliareside.com. Hi Shannon, thank you for your time and recent submission. After careful consideration, we've decided to pursue a different direction for our design needs. Some elements of your proposal felt overly familiar. We've recently seen similar work circulating online, which raised concerns about originality. We wish you the best. I blinked, reread it, then reread it again. Overly familiar? I opened the attached reference, a link to an Airbnb listing. I clicked. Same muted palette, same wireframe style layout. The clean lines with handwritten warmth I'd spent weeks refining. Only it wasn't a corporate page. It was the cabin listing, Jolene's cabin listing. No, my cabin listing, my design, my structure. Every box, every headline, every call to action, every scroll behavior. She hadn't just rented out my physical space. She'd ripped the very skeleton of my professional identity and pasted her name on it. Tobias walked in, saw my face. What happened? I turned the monitor toward him without a word. He squinted, then looked at me. Is that your template? She used the exact same layout I built for the Smithson pitch, I said. My voice was flat, too stunned to rise. I showed her this last winter. She said she was just curious about my creative process. I remembered the moment now in full color. Jolene scrolling through my mock-ups on my tablet, nodding like she understood what she was looking at. This is cute, she'd said. You always make things look so polished. Wish I had your eye. Liar. You didn't publish that version, right? Tobias asked. No, I said. But it doesn't matter. I showed it to her in confidence. That was the direction I was evolving toward. He looked at the screen again, jaw tightening. This isn't just family drama anymore, Shan. This is your business, your work. She's crossing the line. My email inbox pinged again. A second client, smaller, more local, had also pulled out. Same phrasing. Concerns over originality. I felt like someone had cracked open my ribcage. I started digging. Opened Jolene's host profile. Found the update history. Scroll after scroll of marketing copy that mirrored my tone, my voice. Even the image alt texts were familiar. Reviews glowed. The branding is amazing. Whoever designed this really knew what they were doing. The creative vibe sold us. We even hired Jolene to help with our rental launch. That was it. That was the crack that snapped the foundation. She wasn't just stealing anymore. She was profiting in every direction. Off my visuals, my layout, my instincts, my training. She was building a personal brand using my brain. I stood, paced once, then sat back down and opened a blank spreadsheet. Screenshots, dates, URLs, version timestamps. I opened Dropbox and pulled the prototype I'd shared with her, exported it as PDF. Tobias reappeared, carrying his own laptop. I can help log everything. We'll cross-reference every review with her listing updates. If they match any part of your pitch, we log it. I nodded, swallowing the shake in my breath. She said she admired my work. She was watching to copy it. He didn't say anything for a while. Then quietly, What are you going to do? I stared at the wall for a moment, then back at the screen. She's not just taking from me, I said. She's building something with my name, my work, and my silence. This wasn't just about hurt feelings anymore. It was about theft, strategic, repeated, and hidden behind the shield of blood ties. And that shield was about to crack. The morning light barely crept through the blinds when my phone buzzed on the nightstand. It was too early for texts, too late to be spam. I turned over reluctantly, blinking at the screen. One missed call, one voicemail. From Mom. I hesitated. Then I hit play. Her voice came through warm, rehearsed, and full of that syrupy concern I'd heard since childhood. Hi, sweetheart. I know you've been distant, and that's okay. But whatever's going on between you and your sister, I'm sure it's just a misunderstanding. Jolene told me a bit about it, but, well, the boys miss you. And Lily, she made something for you. The message ended with the sound of rustling paper. A photo followed seconds later. My niece Lily, barely 5, holding a crayon-scribbled poster that read, "We miss you, Auntie Shawn." A knot twisted in my stomach. It was deliberate. Too deliberate. Jolene didn't text me. She'd gone straight to Mom, who had always known how to deliver guilt like a slow-acting poison. I sat up, brushed my hair out of my face, and stared at the photo. It wasn't Lily's fault. It never was the kids' fault. But I couldn't ignore how Jolene was now weaponizing them. Again. By noon, I was deep into damage control. Tobias and I had cataloged half the Airbnb reviews and 3 Instagram posts that mirrored my portfolio. My hands were cramping from the scrolling, but the worst hadn't come yet. The phone rang again. Mom. This time I answered. Hi, Mom, I said flatly, resting my elbow on the kitchen counter. Her voice was sweet but slippery. I'm glad you picked up. I was worried you might be avoiding me. I wasn't avoiding, I said. I just needed space. I understand, and I know you and Jolene butt heads sometimes, but she's going through a lot. Managing the house, raising 3 kids, and now all this extra pressure. She didn't mean to upset you. She told me everything was just a big misunderstanding. I said nothing. Shannon, she added, her tone softening into a near whisper. You don't understand what it's like. You're not a mother. My hand clenched around the phone. That phrase, the knife dressed as a bandage. She's your sister, Mom continued, and family forgives, especially when children are involved. I walked to the window, watching the leaves shift in the wind. My heartbeat was louder than her voice. I never said I didn't care about the kids, I said, careful, slow. I know, honey, I just mean, maybe if you had your own, you'd see it differently. There it was, the trump card, the moral superiority wrapped in motherhood. I had heard it 1,000 ways before, from cousins, strangers, even colleagues. But coming from her, it landed differently. I'm sorry you feel that way, I said as calmly as I could, but being a mother doesn't excuse theft. She bristled. I could hear it in her breath. Shannon, don't turn this into something ugly. Jolene loves you. She always looked up to you, even if she doesn't show it right. A memory surfaced, uninvited. I was 10. Jolene had broken Dad's watch, one of the expensive ones he only wore on Sundays. I hadn't even been in the room, but when he asked what happened, she looked straight at me and said, Shannon was playing with it. Mom's words that night still echoed. Be the bigger girl. You're stronger than your sisters. That line had shaped years of silence. Mom, I said, I love you, but I'm not going to be the bigger girl this time. Because what Jolene did, that wasn't clumsy or accidental. It was calculated. And if she's overwhelmed, she should have asked for help, not taken what wasn't hers. There was silence, then a shaky breath. So, what now? You're just going to cut off your family? No, I said softly. I'm going to protect myself. I ended the call. I didn't slam the phone. I didn't throw anything. I just stared at the empty screen and felt something settle in my chest. A strange calm. Minutes passed before I opened my contacts and hit block on Jolene's number. The confirmation felt clean. Later that afternoon, Tobias came home. He set his keys down, kissed the top of my head, and asked if I needed anything. Instead of answering, I walked into the bedroom, pulled out the folder we'd built, screenshots, files, copies of client messages, and placed it in his hands. He looked at me. Are you ready? I'm done playing the role they wrote for me, I said. A few days after I handed Tobias that folder, Mom called again, this time with something more formal in her tone. We're having a little sit-down, she said. Not a fight, just a conversation. Everyone will be there, and I want you to come. Please, honey, just talk like family. I didn't answer right away. She kept speaking, as if the longer she stayed on the line, the more likely I'd say yes. I made your favorite almond cake, she added quietly. I agreed, not for peace, for closure. Saturday evening, Tobias drove me to my parents' house. He parked at the curb and squeezed my hand before I got out. You sure you want to do this alone? I need to look them in the eye, I said. This isn't about yelling anymore. This is about being heard. The living room was too quiet when I stepped in. No television, no music, no laughter. They were already there, waiting. Jolene sat smugly on the left end of the couch, legs crossed, her phone face down in her lap. Derek hovered beside her, arms crossed and jaw tense. Carlene perched stiffly on a dining chair dragged into the room, while Wendell lingered near the mantel like an extra in a drama he didn't want to be in. And Mom? Doris stood behind the coffee table with an apron still tied around her waist, trying to look composed, but her eyes bounced between us like she was afraid of setting off a bomb. Let's start this right, she said. No yelling, no blame. Jolene jumped in first. Look, I get it. You're mad. I made a few bad calls. But come on, Sean. You're single, no kids, good money. You really think it's fair to hoard all that space while we're struggling? Struggling? I repeated. I mean, the boys outgrew their bunk beds, she said. I thought it'd be okay to use the cabin here and there. And the Airbnb thing, I didn't expect it to blow up like that. But since it did, maybe we split it now? I stared at her. You want to retroactively split income from something you illegally listed under your name, using my photos, my furniture, my design work, and say that's fair? She waved a hand. Oh, come on, we're sisters. It's not stealing, it's family sharing. You really gonna turn this into a courtroom drama? I pulled out a printed Airbnb review and read aloud. Hosted by Jolene, beautiful design touches, such a creative space. I dropped the paper onto the table. That's not family sharing, that's impersonation. Derek scoffed. All this over a mountain cabin? Carlene mumbled. You always had a flair for drama, Shan. I looked at her, deadpan. And you always had a flair for disappearing when things got uncomfortable. Doris raised her voice just enough to interject. Girls, please. This is a family, not a courthouse. No, I said firmly, standing. This has been treated like a courtroom from the start. The only difference is, I didn't know I was on trial. I placed a manila envelope on the table. Here are the title documents, the tax returns, the receipts, screenshots of the booking page, timestamps. My name is on every bill. Yours isn't. Jolene opened her mouth. I didn't give her the chance. I've let things slide for years, I continued. You mocked me for not having kids, for choosing work, for living differently, and now you're turning that into justification to take from me? You say I don't understand family? Maybe you forgot what respect looks like. Nobody spoke. Even Wendell was still. This isn't emotional anymore, I said. This is legal. Do not call me again unless it's through a lawyer. I turned toward the door. Doris stepped forward. Shannon, wait! I stopped, just long enough to look her in the eye. I waited long enough. Then I left. 4 days passed since the family meeting. The house was quiet, but my thoughts weren't. Every time I walked past that manila envelope on the counter, it whispered back at me, you did the right thing. Then, early Tuesday morning, my phone buzzed. A Venmo notification. From Jolene, $300. Memo. First part, we'll keep paying. No call, no apology, no explanation. Just a transaction and a text that followed seconds later. Hope that helps. Let's not make this legal. We're sisters, not enemies. I stared at it, teeth clenched. The money wasn't a gesture of goodwill. It was hush money, neatly dressed in emoji-free guilt. Tobias walked into the kitchen behind me and set down his coffee. What's that look? I turned the screen toward him. He read it once and let out a low whistle. Wow, she really thinks she can Venmo her way out of this? I didn't answer right away. She's testing boundaries, he continued. Send a little. See if you cash it. That's not an apology, Shan. That's bait. He was right. She was trying to sneak a new narrative into the legal storyline. One where she was the thoughtful sister just trying to make amends, while I, if I cashed it, became complicit in an agreement I never made. I grabbed my phone and dialed Charlotte, my attorney. Can accepting even partial payments imply I agreed to settle? Yes, she replied without missing a beat. And once that happens, they'll argue it's resolved. You cash that, you lose leverage. Message received. I hit decline payment and took a screenshot, then blocked Jolene on Venmo too. Later that afternoon, just as I sat down with my second cup of tea, another message came in, but this one wasn't digital. A real text from Carlene. Can we talk? Just us, no drama. She suggested a small coffee shop a few blocks away, one with string lights and windows that didn't close all the way in summer. I almost said no, but something in me needed to hear what she had to say. She was already there when I arrived, sipping a matcha latte like this was just any other ketchup. She smiled, but her eyes didn't match. I sat down. No small talk. What's this about, Carlene? She looked down at her cup, then back at me. I knew. About the cabin. Months ago. The words fell heavy. I didn't move. I saw her listing it online, she said. She even bragged about the reviews. I didn't want to stir things up. I figured it was temporary. Temporary? I asked. She made over $5,000 a month using my designs, my name, and you thought staying quiet was safer? She flinched at that. I wasn't trying to hurt you. I just didn't want to be in the middle. You know how Mom gets? If I said anything. I leaned forward. So silence is safer than standing up for me? Her eyes welled up. I didn't think it would get this bad. I took a breath, staring out the window at a couple walking their dog. You didn't think, and that's the problem. She didn't respond. For a moment, the air between us was full of everything unsaid. All the childhood birthdays skipped. The family group texts I was never part of. The times she could have spoken up, didn't. I'm not angry anymore, I said finally. Just done. Carlene bit her lip. I wish I had been braver. I stood, placing my coffee sleeve on the table. Wishing doesn't undo anything. I didn't hug her. Didn't offer a goodbye. As I walked out the door, she called softly after me. Shannon. But I kept walking. Because closure doesn't always come wrapped in apologies. Sometimes it's just knowing who will never have your back. A week had passed since that coffee with Carlene. I hadn't heard from her again, not that I expected to. Tobias and I were driving back from the grocery store late Thursday night when my phone rang. The caller ID flashed Lester, my cabin manager. It wasn't like him to call this late. I answered on speaker. Hey Lester, what's going on? His voice came through low and clipped. You sitting down? Tobias glanced over. I nodded, heart thudding. Yeah, what happened? The motion sensors flagged a break-in at the cabin. Just got the alert. 2 guys, looks like Derek and Wendell, cut through the gate and busted the lock on the back entrance. My breath caught. Tobias immediately pulled the car to the side of the road, engine idling. They what? I said, my voice sharper than I expected. I've got it on the security cam. Clear as day. You want to see it? I do. He texted over the file. I opened it while Tobias leaned over. The grainy footage loaded. There they were, Derek and Wendell, ducking into the frame like they owned the place. Wendell had bolt cutters. Derek kicked at the gate once, twice, and it gave way. They slipped inside like it was a routine errand. Derek even looked straight into the camera and flipped it off. They didn't even try to hide it, Tobias muttered. I stared at the screen as Wendell rifled through drawers, opened cabinets, like he was searching for something specific. Not just vandalizing. Looking. My stomach turned. Did they take anything? I asked Lester. I don't think so. I did a walk-through, nothing missing, but they definitely poked around. I nodded slowly, trying to keep my tone level. Call the police. File the report. I want charges pressed. You sure? He asked. Sometimes with family. This isn't family. This is criminal trespass. File it. After we got home, I opened my laptop and loaded the footage again, screen brightness casting long shadows across our dim kitchen. Every click, every freeze frame made the rage tighten in my chest like a vice. They crossed the line. No more justifying. No more softening the edges because we shared blood. Lester emailed the police report and video evidence the next morning. He added a note. Also, found something you should know. Attached was a background check on Derek, a previous charge from 2 years ago, breaking and entering in Sarasota, Florida, a plea deal, leniency because of family hardship, probation served, record technically sealed, but Lester's old connections in Brevard County still knew how to dig. That was the final nail. I printed the report, then my legal file, then every still image from the security video. Tobias came into the room as I laid everything out on the dining table. "We ready?" I didn't hesitate. "Let's go." We drove to the Asheville Police Department. It was quiet for a Friday morning. No drama, no emotion, just facts. At the counter, I spoke clearly. "I'm here to file charges for forced entry, trespassing, and attempted intimidation." The officer blinked, then gestured to a side room. Within 20 minutes, I'd handed over everything: time-stamped footage, identity of the intruders, proof of ownership, and documentation of the family conflict leading up to it. Marla, my lawyer, met us there halfway through. She brought copies of the property title, screenshots of text messages from Jolene, and outlined a timeline of escalating harassment. We didn't raise our voices. We didn't dramatize a thing. It was quiet power. Cold steel. Back home, I dropped the folder on the kitchen counter and stared out the window. They thought the cabin was just property, a pile of wood on a ridge, a weekend retreat. But for me, it was proof. Proof that I'd built something on my own, without a husband, without kids, without help. And now they were trying to pry that out of my hands. They broke the lock, but I wasn't the one breaking anymore. I was the one closing doors. 3 days after I filed the police report, I was in the middle of folding laundry, doing the kind of mundane task that grounds you when life starts to unravel, when Tobias came through the front door. He looked pale, shaken in a way I hadn't seen before, not even during the worst of the legal mess. He didn't speak right away, just stood there, frozen in the entryway, holding a manila envelope at arm's length like it was radioactive. "This was waiting for me at the site trailer," he said finally, his voice barely above a whisper. "No return address." That was all he needed to say. He walked over, set the envelope down on the counter, and slid it toward me without opening it himself. I noticed immediately how jagged the handwriting was across the front, sloppy on purpose, like someone was trying to make it look untraceable or unstable. I opened it. Inside were printed photos of the cabin, our cabin. But not just the usual angles from the online listings or the ones I'd taken for the civil case. These were different, more invasive. One was snapped from the tree line, another through the side window, and another so zoomed in, you could see the ceramic mugs on the kitchen table through the glass. They weren't just watching the property, they'd been near it, on it, watching us. And then there was the message. A single sheet of paper with mismatched letters cut from magazines, old school ransom note style. "You want to make this ugly? We'll make it uglier." For a split second, the room seemed to go silent. Not in a cinematic, dramatic way, just the kind of silence that falls when the air shifts, when everything inside you gets very, very still. I didn't scream. I didn't even blink. I just walked the envelope over to the kitchen sink, grabbed the pack of matches from the drawer, struck one, and dropped it in. Tobias watched in stunned silence as the flames curled the edges of the photos and the paper, turning them to ash. He leaned back against the fridge, arms crossed tightly. His voice was tight. "That was meant for me. They want you rattled," I said, watching the last piece disintegrate. "So I'll rattle back, with paper, not matches." I picked up my phone and called Marla. 20 minutes later, she was sitting in our living room with her laptop already open. No questions. She knew the drill. I showed her what had come, or rather told her. We hadn't saved the physical evidence, but the damage had been done. Emotionally, legally. She read over my notes and nodded. "It's a threat. Not direct enough to trigger a federal criminal response, but absolutely admissible in a civil suit. We'll enter it into the record as part of a pattern of harassment. It didn't feel like much, but it was something. A move forward. That evening, the skies opened up again. Rain lashed the windows in heavy sheets, and thunder grumbled in the distance. It felt symbolic. Storm inside, storm outside. I was rinsing out a mug when my phone buzzed. Lester. The reviews, he said without greeting. Some of them are gone. What? I asked, wiping my hands. What do you mean gone? Airbnb lets hosts flag reviews for takedown. If they're marked as violating guidelines, they can be removed by a moderator, or by logging in as the host. Someone got into the original host profile and pulled them. Same account, but the username's been changed. A dull thud hit my chest. You traced it? Yeah, he said. IP address is from Asheville. Want to guess who it's registered to? He didn't need to say it. I already knew. Jolene. I sent a group text to Marla and Tobias. We agreed to meet at Lester's office at his cabin the next morning. He'd already pulled up everything by the time we arrived. Side by side on his dual monitors were the original and the new Airbnb listings. The photos were identical. The listing description was nearly word for word, but the account name had changed. The new one read, Jensen Hollow Getaways, a made-up brand hiding in plain sight. But the email address tied to the account, it was still her Gmail. The same one she used for coordinating family birthdays and sending out potluck invitations. No attempt at concealment, just brazenness. She's trying to erase the trail, Marla said, scrolling through the metadata. Too bad we printed everything weeks ago. I zoomed in on the new host photo. It was a stock image, a generic smiling couple in flannel, clearly lifted from a Google search. Poorly cropped, not even believable. Tobias let out a short, dry laugh. They're not even pretending anymore. No, I said, suddenly calm in a way that surprised me. They're just hoping we'll get tired or scared. And then, for the first time, I said it out loud. They went after him. I looked at Marla. This isn't just about me anymore. This is about the people around me. That changes everything. She nodded. Then we escalate. Formal civil suit, restraining order. We'll include the cabin's GPS data, camera footage, all communications, and the full timeline of listings. They want to play games? Let's play by the book and bury them in it. I sat there quietly for a few moments, letting it settle in. The old version of me would have hesitated, second-guessed, wondered if I was overreacting, but not now. They used to laugh at me for being too sensitive, for caring about aesthetics, boundaries, structure, my design work, my silence, my calm. But what they never understood is that my quiet wasn't weakness. That quiet had power. Back at home, I sat down at my desk and opened my email. I drafted a message addressed to Derek and Jolene's attorney. No emotion, no anger, just the truth. Your clients have 72 hours to cease all contact, digital or physical. Further action will include a formal lawsuit and public statement. After that, we go wide. No exclamation marks, no dramatic language. I hit send. Not in rage, not in fear. I sent it because I was ready. Because silence doesn't always mean surrender. Sometimes silence is strategy. Your paper lies won't cover my truth. It had been 5 days since I hit send. 5 days of silence. 5 days without a single reply, threat, or half-hearted excuse. And then, on a humid Monday morning, Marla called. I need you to come in, now. Her tone wasn't urgent. It was clipped. I knew that voice. It was her, you're not going to like this voice. By the time I arrived at her office, she had a manila folder open and her laptop screen filled with tabs. I did another sweep, she began, not even looking up. We cross-referenced some of the guest names from your old Airbnb reviews, the ones we screenshotted weeks ago. And guess what? She flipped the laptop toward me. The usernames were gone, not flagged, not hidden, removed. All these reviews were reported as harassment by the guest accounts, she said, adding air quotes. Except one of the emails attached to a flagged review also belongs to a burner Jolene used for Etsy years ago. I stared at the screen. My jaw tightened, but I didn't say a word. She didn't just steal from me, I said finally. She tried to delete me. Marla nodded. That's what makes it worse. It's not just fraud. It's revisionism. I leaned forward. She wanted to erase the record that I ever existed in that space. Like the design, the build, the years, none of it happened. She tried to edit reality, Marla said. But we kept the original script. Tobias texted mid-conversation. Mail came. You'll want to see this. At home, he handed me an envelope. The paper was stiff, freshly printed. Too fresh. It was a copy of a property deed, supposedly filed in Buncombe County just 2 weeks prior. It listed Derek and Jolene Reynolds as joint owners of the Breen Ridge property. There was even a fake notary stamp. I sat down at the kitchen table and laughed. Not because it was funny, because I was done being shocked. Marla's voice echoed in my head from earlier. They're not even being careful anymore. I scanned the document twice, then a third time. Then I flipped through my own papers, the ones signed over to me by my parents when they moved to Arizona, the ones filed with the county, the actual deed. Their version was a forgery, and a bad one. I called Marla. They're trying to pull a quiet title, she said immediately. They're hoping you'll freeze, and they can use delay tactics to buy time. Instead, I filed a formal suit. Early the next morning, I walked into the courthouse with 2 folders, one filled with original purchase receipts, wire transfer statements, maintenance records, and insurance history. The other, copies of the forged deed, metadata from Jolene's fake Airbnb host account, and the takedown request trail. The woman at the window raised her brows. You brought the whole house with you. I handed her both folders. No, just the foundation. She flipped through the pages. You've got a strong case here. I didn't smile, not out of coldness, but because this was business now, and I was done making this personal. That afternoon, I drafted one final letter with Marla. Not a cease and desist, not a plea, just truth. You've removed reviews, erased credits, forged ownership claims, but truth isn't paper. It's in every tile I laid, every paint stroke, every signature you copied, and you will never make it yours by pretending I wasn't here. I didn't send it to crush them. I sent it to finish this, on my terms. 10 days after the courthouse, Asheville felt quieter. The heat broke for a while. The phone didn't ring. For once, the only mail in my box was catalogs and bills, until a small padded envelope arrived, addressed in blue ink I recognized without needing to see the name. Carlene. I turned it over in my hands, expecting some last desperate apology or maybe a final plea to keep this out of the courts. But inside was just a folded letter, 3 pages, written neatly. No bargaining chips, not even a request to reply. I sat at my kitchen table, sunlight spilling across my hands as I read. She didn't defend Jolene or their choices. Instead, she wrote, We all saw you as different. You chased what we never dared. Maybe we envied you, maybe we feared what it meant, but you stood up and we let you stand alone. That was wrong. She described memories, childhood holidays where I played by myself while they joked in clusters, family chats where my name rarely showed up, how silence became its own ugly choice. Carlene didn't offer excuses. She just admitted she failed to do right. I read it twice. The apology wasn't loud, but it was honest. It didn't fix the damage, but it named it. And that was something. I folded the letter, tucked it deep in my desk drawer, and left it there. Sometimes, closure isn't about answers. It's about no longer needing them. A few days later, Marla called. It's done. They've accepted the settlement. Full damages, no trial, and they've signed the cease and desist. You'll see the transfer in your account by Monday. There would be no headline, no spectacle. The public feud that Jolene seemed to crave never came. Just a few signed documents, money moving quietly from one account to another, and a final digital block that brought no satisfaction, just peace. I kept the cabin, but I didn't want its ghost clinging to every holiday, every weekend. So I put it on a long-term lease. No more Airbnbs, no more family reunions in Breen Ridge, no more waiting for an apology from people who never planned to give it. Doris called me one afternoon, her voice softer than it had ever been. You sound different, Shannon. Calmer. I smiled, not that she could hear it. That's because I chose peace, Mom. This time I didn't choose guilt. She didn't argue. For the first time in a long time, she just listened. We hung up, and I felt lighter. That weekend, Tobias and I loaded up the car for a drive west. Santa Fe, open highways, just the two of us. No Wi-Fi, no work calls, no family drama waiting in the notifications. Somewhere past Amarillo, I pulled out my old journal. The pages were blank, but my mind wasn't. I started writing again. Not stories about revenge or anger, but reminders of the strength it took to walk away. Not every ending needed fireworks. Some endings needed only a closed door. Peace, I learned, isn't the absence of conflict. It's the presence of boundaries. Of knowing that your worth doesn't depend on who apologizes or who refuses to change. Sometimes people break things to be noticed. Sometimes they stay silent so nobody rocks the boat. I chose something else. I spoke up. And I'm still standing. There was a time I believed setting boundaries meant I was being selfish. That if I stood my ground, I'd come off as the bad guy. I worried that speaking up for myself would drive people away. That love, friendship, or family ties were too fragile to withstand the truth of who I was. So I stayed quiet. I shrank myself. I compromised to keep the peace. But over time, I learned something no one ever taught me growing up. Peace isn't silence. Peace isn't the absence of conflict. Real peace comes from living in alignment with your truth, even if that truth makes other people uncomfortable. If you've ever been told you're too emotional, too quiet, too intense, or too different, let me say this clearly. Those aren't flaws. They're not mistakes you need to fix or parts of yourself you need to erase to belong. Sometimes, the very traits others criticize are the ones they secretly admire or wish they had. And in the end, no one can take away what you've built from honesty, hard work, and self-respect. For me, this story wasn't just about reclaiming a cabin. It was about reclaiming space, my right to exist fully, to take up room without apologizing, to speak without softening the message for someone else's comfort, to stop negotiating with people about whether or not I'm too much or not enough. That space, physical and emotional, became sacred. It reminded me I didn't need anyone's approval to feel grounded in who I am. And honestly, that realization came with a cost. I had to make some hard choices. I had to walk away from familiar places and faces. I had to choose myself in rooms where I used to disappear just to keep things calm. So let me ask you, have you ever had to choose between your family and your mental health? Between keeping the peace and keeping your voice intact? Between their comfort and your truth? If this speaks to something in you, drop a K in the comments. Let me know where you're watching from. Or just hit 1 inch if this hit close to home. And if it didn't, that's okay too. I still want to hear your story. What keeps you quiet? What makes you feel seen? If anything I said lit a spark in you, if it gave you clarity, courage, or even just a sense that you're not alone, go ahead and subscribe to the channel. I've got more stories like this, and I think we might be walking some of the same roads.